We at Time Shifters hope that you enjoyed this rare and infamous moment that combines a first-rate disaster with genuine historical significance. But now it's time to take a deep breath as we prepare to temporarily reset you. Get your cars to Mars.
Hey everyone, this is Christopher. Welcome back to the Time Shifters podcast. In this show, Tom and I discuss and review film and television, primarily in the sci-fi, fantasy, and horror genres. Let's get Tom in on the show. Tom, how are you?
I am well. How are you, sir?
I'm a little, well, as you called me before we started recording, a little low energy today. I'm trying not to be, but I am feeling a little just...
No, I'm with you. I'm just trying to be there for our fans.
Yes. Well, I'm sure our fan appreciates
our
it.
fan? Yeah. Yes, and thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, or madam. Thank you. Yes.
Whichever one showed up this time.
What have you been up to the last couple weeks?
It's been pretty quiet. I've managed to sneak in a viewing of the new Captain America movie. And I know you haven't taken part in much of the Marvel, and it's one of those perfectly fun watch. It's just Disney has just inundated all of us with so much content. It just all kind of runs together. Mm-hmm. And this movie didn't break any new ground. It felt more like, despite the fact that it's a feature film, it felt very much like Falcon and the Winter Soldier Season 2 premiere. And what's even more frustrating, because I'm not giving anything away, the Red Hulk is in the movie. They plastered him all over everything. But the way that the movie kind of worked, I know they wouldn't have been able to hold it off for long, but the reveal of Red Hulk should have meant more if you didn't know that he was in it going into the film. Like, there was a point in there that would have been an amazing reveal, and they ruin it because they need to get their toy line together, and they want to get your butt in the seat and all that. And then when they do the Red Hulk reveal, I know they're supposed to be quote-unquote Easter eggs, but a lot of the shots are dead straight Green Hulk shots with the Red Hulk. So the same movements, the same attacks, the same... There's even the first time the Mark Ruffalo... Hulk does something where he does this weird smirk look over his shoulder. The Red Hulk reproduces that one shot for shot. I'm like, okay, I've seen this. So
they're reusing their software or their what they've already got in the can, and
right.
just tweak the color on this one.
Try to make the face a little more Harrison Ford-ish, but. Like I said, a fun watch. It just kind of bleeds into the background, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I've heard hot and cold, actually, between it all, I've heard what would be considered lukewarm reactions, I suppose, on it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the complaint you often hear is that you have to have watched so much else prior to it to really get everything that goes on within the film.
And that's fair, and it's part of the blessing and the curse of the whole thing. It's amazing that they have such a long-running thread that one goes into the other, but yeah, now that you're decades down the line, it's too easy to, like, what?
Yeah, I've watched the occasional Marvel film when it finally shows up to streaming or something like that, and I don't watch all the series and things and there are so many moments where I've seen something or someone says something and I just have to go, I guess that meant something.
Well, yeah, and this one in particular, because it's not like you could just be a fan of just the movies, because you can't go from the existing movies and go, oh, the Falcon became Captain America. You have to watch the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series to know that.
Yeah, that honestly kind of turns me off of the entire Marvel film franchise. Yeah, I don't want to have to watch dozens of hours, if not hundreds of hours, of television series in order to get the latest film.
Right. And yes, and that's a fair critique. You can't go into this without that background. Otherwise, you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So, but because I have absorbed all of that, I knew what was going on. It was just, and it's very weird because this one also incorporates stuff related to the Incredible Hulk background, and specifically all the way back to the Incredible Hulk movie that had Norton as
Edward Norton
as the Hulk, as Bruce Banner, and they use other specifically actors and other characters from that series, from that movie, in this one. Mm-hmm. And like, wow, okay, now you dialed it literally like 15 years ago to pull some of this stuff along with stuff you just watched 2 years ago. And that's part of the problem too, is with all the content that you need to go into this, and the fact that they're pulling from decades worth of material and so much time has passed, like, even if you watch that stuff before you'd have to watch it fairly recently or just have an incredibly good memory.
You know, I don't have a problem with them adding things into a film that a super fan is going to sit there and go, "Ooh,
yeah,
you know, that's this thing that's referencing this series or this show or movie." I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem if you can't write the film that it can't also stand alone.
Right. Yes. No. And that's kind of key about a film. It is, you should, a loose understanding should get you to enjoy the film still. Now, this is where Marvel has the potential to do better things and make it fresh again, because they've introduced their multiverse and all that. Seeing a long-form trailer of the coming Fantastic Four film, that one is clearly in a different universe.
It's a bubble, yeah.
Yeah, so this is when they can introduce all the characters they want and treat them all as new, because this doesn't fit with the existing line. Now, the unfortunate part is they'll find some way to pull it all back together again, and that will either be amazing if well done or terrible. So you won't get one or the other.
No, and I feel like that's going to be... I think that's a pretty good description of this new Fantastic Four film. I think this film is either going to be great,
right,
or it's going to be awful.
Right.
I don't know that there's any middle ground. No,
but I mean, I'm getting... I have a bit of hope with what little I have seen. I'm not digging in deep, but the retro vibe that they're bringing, the very 60s look that they're adding to it, that could be fun.
It could be. I don't dislike what I've seen.
Right.
It's not making me go, I can't wait till that comes out, but I don't dislike what I'm seeing.
Well, yeah, and then when you see just little touches in the little bits of trailer that they give you, like the floating robot Herbie has literally... Herbie's not only in it, but his eyes literally are reel-to-reel tapes. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, that's fun.
I thought I was the only one that liked Herbie from the cartoon, but apparently someone else does too.
Yeah. No, completely dorky as hell, but that's still a fun addition. Other than that, while still on that 60s vibe, I only watched one episode from Netflix of a German series called Cassandra that is set as a family moving into a very retro house, but it's supposed to be Germany's oldest smart home. Complete like the computer system that runs the house is a full on. It fills the basement.
Nice.
It's like a giant supercomputer, also with like reel to reel tape kind of stuff and all that. Like even to turn it on, they had to flip the giant lever to turn it on, and nothing happens right away. But by the time you're through the first episode, Cassandra, the house AI, is up and running, and it's just so it's got tons of great creep factor right away. But the AI herself, aside from the fact she's just the right amount of creepy, it's all that 60s retro feel that's really fun. There's giant screens all over the house where Cassandra follows the family around to keep an eye on them and talk to them and do things for them. And then she has robot bodies that are very Rosie-esque from the Jetsons, and they look like they're made out of Electrolux vacuum parts, complete with a giant CRT TV head that even tilts whenever she's got a weird thought or something. So, it's got lots of potential, and I can't wait to dig in more on that one. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
Nice, good. Looking forward to hearing what you think in the future.
Yeah, no, I'll have to definitely dig in more. So how about you? What have you been up to?
Not anything of a lot of quality, other than we're continuing our Babylon 5. I think I mentioned that we got to the end of season 3 and went back to season 1 because my wife was actually kind of got into it and she wanted to fill in all the missing parts.
Okay.
So we're back to season 1, which has been quite a while since I've seen season 1 with Sinclair and the gang and everything. Yeah. So that's been fun. I forgot how early so much of this stuff, or the groundwork for what happens in the latter seasons, is set down in season 1. So,
well, that was supposed to be the fun part about Babylon 5, is it was intended to be one long continuous story. So,
oh no, I understand. It's just I in my mind, I thought a lot of the shadow stuff and everything came much later, and here we're like maybe episode 8 or whatever, where Morden shows up, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we introduced it pretty quickly. But yeah, no, that was the blessing and curse for that. It's great that it was intended as a very early long form series, one continuous story, which at the time it was out was not something that happened a whole lot. But then it also suffered from the fact that it's a syndicated series, and it was always constantly under threat on whether or not they were going to get to finish their story.
Yeah, and that whoever was buying the thing to show didn't necessarily show it in the order in which it was intended.
No, I seem to recall when it moved to like TNT on cable, it was... You weren't really sure what you were getting and when.
The evolution of the characters, certainly by when you go back to season 1 versus when you saw them in like season 3, the evolution of the characters is... Jakar and Londo are really almost just like a comedy double act in season 1, at least through the first part of it. And when you see and when you know where and how they end up, it's bizarre to see them portrayed that way.
Oh yeah, no. But that adds to the drama of it all, because it was all kind of sort of laughable at the beginning and gets really dark and serious.
And well, there's those moments with Londo in the beginning that made me fall in love with that character. When he falls in love with the showgirl who turns out as a slave trying to get some information that'll take down the Centauri houses and stuff like that. And he's just so vulnerable and sweet and nice through the whole thing. And you're like, see? That's why I love this man.
Yeah, no. No, which makes both compelling to watch and sad to watch is just watching him go down where he thinks he's going up.
Right. Yeah, still absolutely fun. It's a great series to revisit every now and again.
Oh, absolutely.
You kind of have to wait long enough for you to just sort of forget a little.
Yeah.
And then you go back, and I swear sometimes you pick up things that you hadn't noticed before. Like it's about the third or fourth time where we're at right now where someone tells Garibaldi to watch his back. Leading up to when Garibaldi gets shot in the back.
Right.
So I'm like, wow. I mentioned to my wife, she's like, that's like the third time someone said that to him. That's important. She's like, okay.
Yeah, the only problem with Babylon 5, watching it this late and all that, is the effects don't hold up super well.
They aren't awful. Yes, they are. They're dated. They're not awful. There's a few where it's just, yeah, it's obviously very programmed air blocks that go, and then when they get hit, they go in exactly perpendicular and, different the directions. But
yeah, no, and that's all I mean. It doesn't take away from it. It's like, yeah, I could do better with my phone today.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's the only part that gets a little tough to watch. It's like that whenever you watch anything from the 90s with significant amount of early CGI stuff. It's just a little rough.
Yeah, you're talking the show that was effectively the first to use that level of CGI. So,
and the amount that they had to integrate into that. Now, to their credit, the CGI stuff was just unto itself. They didn't try to have too much CGI and people together too terribly often.
Right. No. It was pretty much relegated to outside the station.
Right. So, yeah, you didn't get all of them of a sudden them trying to make a CGI Sinclair floating in space all of a sudden.
Right.
They avoided that as much as possible, which was helpful.
Yeah. No, still very cool. At some point, I hope to get a chance to actually talk to J. Michael Straczynski. I'd really like to get a chance to talk to him about his career because, I mean, considering you're talking about a guy who cut his teeth writing for children's cartoons and television shows to go on to create something like Babylon 5, and now, as I understand it, he's writing a lot of well-regarded comic books and stuff. So, yeah, he'd be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, no, that would be a fun talk.
Let's take a short break here. We'll listen to a promo from their podcast, and we will continue our discussion on the Martian Chronicles as we talk about Episode 2, The Settlers.
This is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction film. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project. Well, it's going to take us a long. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't? Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
Now the rockets come like beating drums, like silver locusts swarming through the emptiness of space. And from the rockets come men to beat the strange world into a shape that is familiar to the eye. They come to find something, or leave something, or get something. To dig up something, or bury something, or leave something alone. To bludgeon away the strangeness. Colonel Wilder becomes chief coordinator of the planet Mars, hoping that perhaps he can save some remnant of the old Martian civilization from the advancing thunder of human feet. But it all happens so quickly.
All right, this second part of the miniseries picks up several years after part one. Colonel Wilder has been appointed as director of the Martian colonization effort. Fleets of ships have left Earth, and their occupants have settled on Mars, creating a dozen small communities. Wilder, while trying his best to minimize the damage to the planet that Spender predicted, can't stop the settlers from doing just that. Roads are made, buildings are erected, and ancient Martian ruins are being disassembled to be transported back to Earth. As with the first one, 3 distinct stories are told, all why a potential world war on Earth looms on the horizon. A missionary group comes to Mars, and a pair of them find themselves lost in the mountains following a story heard on board ship of a prospector having been saved after a life-threatening injury by mysterious blue lights. I think that's definitely one that we'll talk about a little bit. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, outside of First Town, the Lustigs, parents of one of the astronauts of the second expedition, receive a mysterious visitor during a storm, and this person looks very much like their son, David. And finally, we again meet Sam Parkhill, the only other survivor of the third expedition. He and his wife have opened a diner, expecting there to be thousands of truckers and miners to be working the nearby mountains. Rock Hudson returns as Wilder, of course, as does Darren McGavin as Parkhill. Joining the cast is Fritz Weaver as Father Peregrine, Roddy McDowall as Father Stone, and Michael Anderson Jr. as David Lustig. I believe Michael Anderson Jr. is the son of the director, Michael Anderson.
That's a fair assumption.
Yeah. Real quick, a little bit of trivia here. An 11-year-old Laurie Holden of, Walking Dead fame.
Oh, yeah.
Plays the young daughter of Colonel Wilder.
Aww.
She's the stepdaughter of director Michael Anderson.
Sensing a little nepotism.
If you happen to look during a scene in First Town, there's a movie theater, and there's posters on the wall for the film showing. That film is showing The Silver Locust, and that was the original working title of The Martian Chronicles.
Oh, nice.
Of the actual novel, I should say, of The Martian Chronicles.
Okay, cool. That's a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I was watching it and trying to make it out. I was like, oh, I wonder what's playing. And the camera kept moving just before I could kind of focus in and figure out what was on it. So thank you, IMDb Trivia, for filling in the gap.
Yeah, no, I caught the movie theater thing, but I didn't bother to try to figure out what that was on there.
Yeah, but that is a great little bit of an Easter egg. My wife is, of course, watching this with me. I asked her what she thought of this episode, and her immediate reply is, that was slow. I have to admit, maybe when Ray Bradbury called this miniseries boring,
right,
while part 2 has some really great moments and some interesting themes, it does take its time.
It does, but believe it or not, that's not the thing that was kind of the... I actually managed to get into this one pretty good. But the thing that kept taking me out of it, and again, I'm just going to start off saying this right away. I am going to give it as much room as possible for the fact that when he wrote the book, they wouldn't have known that much about Mars. It is still shot with the lowest of budgets, and this would have been created in at least 1979 before it ever made it to air.
Probably 77 or 78, because I think it was originally going to air in 79.
Okay, so it's even a little more dated than the release date gives you to assume. But the part where I struggled with a lot is, first off, there isn't that much time between the end of the first movie. It's like 5 years. Mm-hmm. So in 5 years' time, they built enough rockets and put things like semi-trucks and such on said rockets, got all of these people there, managed to get them all settled, managed to grow vegetation that has never been there ever, because there was lots of more plant on Mars than...
There was scrub in the mountains, but that's actually one of the things I was going to bring up later, is that this doesn't give you any idea that there's any agricultural efforts being made.
But see, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to more the first town stuff. You'll see plants on and around the domiciles, and like a little bit of
house
field.
Plants. Okay.
Yeah, so that was that stuff, and then the thing that just kind of really... I was on board with some of the domiciles being very stark at first. Metal walls, very, very basic. It's what you would have expected for a settlement. But the one family's house that we keep spending a lot of time in, they had time to put the shittiest looking wallpaper up. They had all of the kitschy 70s furniture in there and lamps. And like, seriously, in 5 years' time, you've done all this and made it tacky all to boot?
Yeah. That definitely wanted to talk about the production design in this story, because it plays a much bigger role than it does even in the first one.
Right, yeah, because the first stuff is just all very stark. We're just trying to get there. Whatever you think of their ships and all that, we don't spend a whole lot of time with the tech.
Right, yeah, the Lustig home and what you see of Wilder's establishment, and I'm assuming home and or offices of First Town. From the exteriors, I love the design. It's modular. It's just, big silver rectangles. The Lustig home has like a porch on it, but it goes down to a dock. And yes, they have hanging like geraniums hanging from the thing and everything.
Right.
But yeah, you go inside. You're right, with the amount of time that's passed, wallpaper, crystal lamps, and things like that. Like, would that be there maybe in 25 years or something?
But like you said, there's not been time really to establish agriculture. It's and we'll get into this more, but it's clear this is not being sustained by the planet itself.
Right. Yeah, everything has to come from Earth. So the Lustigs moved to Mars and brought with them their ceramic lamps and their wallpaper and their bed and all this stuff that just seems a little too homey.
Right. And well, either that or they were ginormously wealthy to the extent that, well, one, they picked up and headed out to Mars to maybe, hopefully, kind of find their son in a desperate attempt to think he might still be alive on the planet.
Right.
But then took the time to take all their tchotchkes with them.
Right. Which we know that in reality, it costs thousands of dollars per pound to send anything into space.
Millions in many cases.
Right. So the idea that they're going to pack up glass clocks and heirlooms and stuff and bring it with them is a little far-fetched. It doesn't really... It does kind of take you out of the idea that that this is supposed to be like a frontier town.
Right, and I think they were trying to strike that balance between, first off, this is an older family in mourning, and they've established essentially an old-style homestead. But, I mean, you're taking out the equation that you're on another planet. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to give it like the story that they were telling with that family was intriguing.
Very.
But yes, their domicile took me a little out of it because I just couldn't help but go, really? What the hell is this?
It's just the inconsistency,
right?
Because the exterior, and then even like their dining set, which is just preformed plastic, and their dishes look like very utilitarian style. They're just very basic, nothing fancy, single color. Mm-hmm. It's like that all makes a lot of sense that would be there, but you have the fleur-de-lis wallpaper, right. behind it. It's just too inconsistent.
Right, yeah, and that part does just kind of shatter the illusion of what you're trying to do here. Which is funny, because, I mean, even when we get to the story with Park Hill and his diner looked still fairly utilitarian.
Yes, very much. And even Wilder's home is also, there's no wallpaper. Everything's just silver wall. His furniture's either plastic or just metal chairs.
The beds are basic. They're almost cot-like. So,
right. Yeah. So why is the Lustics that way?
Right, yeah, exactly. That's why I think somewhere this man lived on a mountain that was made sheerly of diamonds. And it just turns out they had crappy taste.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the stories kind of in order this time? Because last time we kind of did a 1, 3, and 2.
Right, no, we can, and we can actually talk about how they
intertwine a little bit more in this one.
They intertwine. This has, despite being 3 stories, they seem to all live in the same space at the same time.
Yeah, so I think before we talk about the second one, we kind of have to talk about the first story with the missionaries, with Peregrine and Stone, heading off into the mountains.
I wish to dial time back and sit down with Ray Bradbury himself and get more of a vibe about how he feels about that story that he was telling, because it took some unexpected turns, at least for me. Aside from the two fathers' very perceptions of what they were doing, the Roddy McDowell, very much the doubter in all of this, didn't really want to even go on this particular mission because he sees their mission as something else. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be there for the settlers, not for this wild goose chase that I think he feels this is all being. In fact, even when presented with a factual circumstance, he still kind of denies it. Because when they get into a position where they have to be saved by these creatures, whatever they are, he still doesn't believe that's actually what happened.
Right. No, we must have run.
Yeah, we must have run. I'm like, hey, okay, you're stretching your credibility here. Even you didn't actually open your eyes or anything. But at any rate, but it's when we get to the final dynamic with Father Peregrine and at least one of the blue balls, and he's talking about how he's prepared, and it's a little telling about religion in and of itself. This guy was prepared to more or less abandon his current beliefs in favor of believing in the blue orbs and start a religion to them, build a shrine to them instead of the cross. We're going to have 3 blue orbs as our symbol. And when the consciousness spoke to him and just started telling, basically, you have this all wrong. Right. We want none of this.
I did actually like that, and you're right. It is a very telling and very reminiscent of a lot of religion. Most of our religious holidays were usurped by other cultures in order to make the transition to the Catholic Church easier for them. The winter solstice and celebrations turns into Christmas, all that sort of stuff. They went into Germany, and where they talked about they're waiting for Ragnarok and all that stuff, and the Catholic Church said, well, that already happened, and then there was Adam and Eve. See, you can be Catholic,
Right? Yeah, no.
What Father Peregrine is talking about, like, oh, we'll build a church here, and instead of a cross, we'll do a blue orb to represent Martian Christ.
Right.
And that's literally what he says.
Right.
And yes, I do love the fact that the consciousness, this blue orb says, look, we've been around so long, we don't even remember where we came from. We don't have sin. We don't have need for any of this stuff. We don't need worship. We don't have want. Just you go amongst your people and do what you do.
Yeah, and more or less, any of what he was perceiving as some sort of sense of morality, he wasn't picking up on more curiosity in their own past.
Yeah,
that
possibly.
whole notion. The consciousness speaks to the fact that we used to have bodies. We used to live like you do. We're not tied to any of that anymore. So the act of saving them is more of an act of interacting with the past to them than anything. And I absolutely adored all of that part. And it also goes along with very much where my headspace is anyone that perceives anything that is far more advanced than you could ever be would be conceived of as being like God. And so the fact that these things float around and can just lift people or teleport them or whatever, of course that seems ethereal and godlike. Why wouldn't it be to us? To them, we're the ant walking across the ground.
Right.
And that's just it. They're not motivated to hate anything because they don't feel that way anymore. There's no sense of gain. There's no sense of mortality. They don't want for anything. They don't need for anything. And if you can get there, the world just is a thing to observe. I love that.
No,
I like
very
to
much.
be that.
And it makes sense that they would appear and look around because you figure they've had centuries to watch the Martian people.
Right.
Now the Martian people have been gone for nearly a decade. And so they're probably sitting around going, well, this is boring. And now suddenly, oh, wait, here's something new.
Well, yeah, and the people who set the last of the Martians on their way are the ones showing up, and they're like, okay, well, this is it's a new movie.
Yep.
And they're just getting the latest in the series. So yeah, to that effect, they're us. We're just observing this thing going on, and they're just kind of, okay, that wasn't what I saw before. That just used to be dirt. Now there are people on the dirt.
Right.
So I really, really, really dug that part. And it was still a little telling that despite all of this revelation, he still didn't fully give up where his head was at in all of this. Like, he kind of had an epiphany. But he had an epiphany the way humans have epiphanies. You can easily be sucked right back out of it as quickly as you gain this new knowledge. So, that was very interesting, and as slow as that played out, I think it actually worked for it.
I think so too. I think you needed those moments with the Peregrine and Stone talking with each other. You needed Peregrine to explain his motivation for joining the church in the first place, because that plays very strongly in the second part of the story.
Yes, it does.
In a scene we will definitely talk about.
Yes.
So yes, where it feels like you have a lot of sort of padding, or why are we still with these guys in robes in the mountains? Why are we still with them? No, it's all very. There's a reason. Ray Bradbury doesn't write anything without a reason. I think he was making a message of some kind, and maybe it's the sort of message that you can take away with it what you will, but there's something there.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think he leaned a certain way, but maybe that's just my interpretation of it. But
that's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where this part of the miniseries feels dramatically different than the first part. Is despite the fact that there are 3 storylines, they do interweave and interconnect. They're important to each other. One does not exist without the other.
Exactly. So jumping to that second part where we meet the Lustigs, and again, I think while I liked the first part, this second story is probably my favorite. Much like in the first part, or in the first, how do you want to say it?
Yeah, I know.
The first episode.
The first episode of the miniseries.
The first episode of the miniseries, the second story told was definitely my favorite. Same goes with the second episode of the miniseries. The middle story with the Lustig family is definitely my favorite of the 3. As we explained, husband and wife, they've come to Mars. They're the parents of one of the 3 astronauts from the second mission. I believe David Lustig was the one who disappears rather quickly. He sees like a great aunt who had passed away years ago, and they go off and we never see him again.
Yeah, no, we don't stick with that one, but it's just meant that he's one of the 3 that die.
Exactly. So his parents have come to Mars to look for him because he just disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. They had some vain hope that they might find some evidence of him alive or dead. But they've ended up settling on Mars. They've got a nice little home right on a canal. As I said, exterior looks fantastic. Interior, questionable.
Yes, quite.
And during a very violent thunderstorm, which, again, facts don't matter.
I'm trying not to focus on that too hard.
They see a figure on a pier in the canal or something, and it looks like David. The mother is, of course, frightened by this and wants her husband to go inside, lock the door, let's forget it ever happened. But the father doesn't lock the door and actually invites this figure in, or tells him he can come in. He's like, they're going to bed. He says, but if you want to come in and warm up, I'll leave the door unlocked.
Right.
The next morning they wake up and everything seems fine. And their son, David, is home and everyone's good. The father knows something's wrong. This can't be David, but the mom is completely acting as if nothing ever happened.
Right, yeah, no. Whereas she's terrified the night before and wants no part of this, she acts like David never left them, that he was there with them when they settled.
And I love the moment that David, for lack of any other name for him, it doesn't try to fool the father at all.
No.
He admits he's not who he says he is, but he tells him, I sang to both of you last night. It will make things easier. It'll make it easier for you to accept me. And especially her.
Yeah.
And that was the explanation. He obviously used some sort of telepathy or something to...
I think at this stage you're supposed to believe it's the same deal that happened with the second crew from the first episode, is that whole notion. He's trying to do a slightly tweaked version of inserting him into their lives.
I like that the father, obviously, he knows this just isn't right, and he's combative a little bit with this David, which actually makes David like say, well, if you don't want me here, I'm going to leave.
Right.
Because the doubt that is within the father looks like it actually is endangering David.
Yeah.
And that, of course, distresses the mother.
Yes.
Which makes the father kind of go, sorry about that. Could you please come back?
Yeah. Yeah, because he's doing everything he can to protect his wife without understanding the circumstances he's in at that stage.
In complete innocence, she's just thrilled that the family's together and wants the family to have a night out in First Town, which terrifies David.
Yeah.
And, we're not entirely sure why. We've gotten hints, but we don't know entirely why.
No, and what was the word that he kept using? He says something like he'll be caught.
He'll be caught. Yeah. He went for a walk.
And you don't know what it means to be caught yet.
Exactly. He when he first leaves after Mr. Lustig kind of confronts him, when he does come back, he says, I was walking, I got a little close to town, I was almost caught. And even Mr. Lustig's like, caught? And then, of course, Mrs. Lustig comes in and breaks the conversation and, here, help me set the table.
Right.
So, we don't know exactly what that means. So they do go to town. David begs Mr. Lustig, stay close to me, which he tries to do. But, of course, First Town is crowded. There's lots of people. People bump into other people. They get separated from David. David disappears. And then you start hearing stories from other people in town about people who were either thought missing or long dead are showing up. People are being sighted. Right. Oh, you remember I forget the family's name. Their daughter Lavinia, they thought she drowned in the canal. She just showed up. And that's where we, the audience, watch and piece it all together along with Mr. Lustig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were very effective at that.
Extremely.
And that's what I love about this sequence too. Whereas when the second team arrives on Mars and the Martians that are there basically envelop the three of them and convince them they're in their own world and they've personified the people from their world. We even get that little tidbit at the end that it doesn't fade right away. Mm-hmm. That they continue to carry on their lives as if they were those people until it finally, like a muscle finally relaxing, it finally let go and they could carry on as Martians again. And it's far more insidious this time that if a Martian is now enveloped by humanity, they can't control the muscle contraction that starts to occur to make them appear as these individuals in all of these lives. And it drives the Martian, like it's literally sucking the life out of him.
I love the moment. Lustig realizes what's happening. He goes to the house to get Lavinia, who's now with the family, and sees her up in her room and gets her attention. And he says, come with me. And Lavinia's like, I can't. The memories are too strong in this house.
Right.
Literally, they are trapped by the memories of Lavinia that are in the home. And it was only through Lustig's pleading, come with me. We can go. We'll never come to town again. We'll be at our home. We're away from town. You'll be safe. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that allows them to break the spell, right. I guess you could call it, that they're under. And it's done cheaply and everything, but it's a great little scene when it's Lavinia who jumps from the porch, and it's David when he lands.
Yes. No, I actually
clever.
Yes.
I loved it though.
Incredibly cheap way to do that. It's just a cut scene. But it was an effective cutscene. And I even took this opportunity to maybe, it's what Ray Bradbury's writing does for you anyways. You have to bring you into what he writes in order to take away what you need from it. And I took from this that this was probably one of the Martians that was probably involved in David's ending that we didn't get to see.
Oh,
so I am reading into this that there's a reason, aside from the fact it's just two people and they're out, and it's probably far more relaxing to just be one person than torn to become multiple. But in this case, it's also probably a return to the familiar. He may have even been one of them for David.
And you do wonder if there's any amount of remorse or anything that may have been felt that would draw him to the Lustics to want to
he
bring...
didn't have to go anywhere near any of the human settlements. At least that's your assumption, that he wouldn't have to.
Exactly.
But
so
he's drawn for some reason.
Yeah, I do wonder. Maybe there's a little bit of a remorse or guilt, and that's what brings him to the Lustics. Because why else would you do that? Why else would you visit that home?
Right, especially if at this stage the concept of caught is already in his head, their head. But yeah, the concept that there is danger in being around so many humans, that even being around two, doesn't that create a potential for a problem? But I am pulling from the thread from the first to attach to the second so that there would be reason for this. And that feels right somehow.
Before Lustig finds David / Lavinia, when he's searching for him, at one point we do visit Father Peregrine again at the First Town Church. And that's the scene I think we wanted to talk about. We kind of skipped right over almost immediately.
We do, but that's after he gets lost in the town.
Yes, I know. Yes, exactly. But I mean, that happens before Lustig ends up finding him at as Lavinia, is all I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I know. It kind of all comes together. It all runs together.
I think I'm remembering it slightly different, but that's fine.
So yeah, we see the interior of the church. And again, this church looks like what you might expect in a frontier town on Mars.
Sure.
It's very simple.
Yes.
All metal and glass, that sort of thing.
Yeah, very basic.
And it's a brilliant reveal and scene with Father Peregrine, and he is praying at the cross, and he starts hearing water, what sounds like water dripping. And of course the only source of water is the holy water chalice,
the basin
at the side of the church. And he goes over, then slowly in the darkness he sees a hand, effectively a hand with stigmata dripping blood into the holy water. And Father Peregrine, who his motivation for joining the church was to meet Jesus Christ in person,
right,
is suddenly face to face with his vision of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Holy crap.
Yes.
This scene apparently in some markets was edited out.
I could see that.
Yeah, absolutely. This would be considered sacrilege by so many.
Oh, blasphemous on an enormous level, especially given the circumstances of the conversation.
That scene makes the entire thing worth it. It is so eye-opening and just wow.
It's powerful from at least a conceptual idea of religion and how it works, but it is also incredibly telling in how how Ray Bradbury is trying to portray how detrimental what is happening to a Martian.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we really truly feel what David meant when he said and was terrified at the notion of being caught. Mm-hmm. In this case, this is when we fully learn that it's caught like being in a net. It's being completely enveloped and unable to free or run in any way, shape, or form, because the more somebody wants something, the less they can do about it.
Right. Yeah, he begs Peregrine to just avert your gaze, look away. The more you look at me, the more I become this, you'll kill me.
Right.
Because it's Jesus having been crucified. So you're assuming not only does he have, the wounds on his hands from being crucified, I'm assuming he's also got, a spear thrust into his side.
Yes.
He's
dying.
He is dying.
He's literally
yes.
physically dying.
And it's done so well. I just love that scene, and Peregrine is just almost unable to form thoughts. He doesn't understand. He's torn, because this is his dream come true, and now his vision of Jesus Christ is telling him, don't even look at me. I don't want you to look at me. I want you to look away. I want you to go away. And the father's like, but.
Yeah, right. I even took this to a different level in my own head. Aside from, he is now burdened with the physicality of the perception of Christ to this father. But given that this is all mental too, it's the crushing weight of expectation for the form he has taken. The sheer burden of essentially the entirety of a religion is falling on one individual, one consciousness who didn't want it, who isn't what this guy thinks he is, and all he can do is feel the wave after wave after wave of expectation that is put upon this vision that he is.
Mm-hmm. No, it is brilliant.
If anything, the only thing I would have wished for more in this scene, it is for the guy who was playing the Christ figure for this to carry out a little more anguish in the delivery of all of this. I wanted to feel it more.
I thought
he was good. He was real good. But
yeah, I thought he did a decent job, especially with some of his, when Peregrine tries to step forward and he's like, no, please. And, he's struggling, and the crown of thorns are slowly cutting his head. And no, I thought he did a pretty decent job.
I'm not taking anything away. I just feel like, especially with where I am in my head about that scene, I just needed it to feel the crushing weight of it all just a little bit more.
All right, fair enough.
Crumbling under the yoke of all of that's being put on this guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to start speeding ahead a little bit. Anyway, to end the story, he does eventually escape the church. Once again, yes, as I said, Mr. Lustig finds him again, and they try to make it back to the boat so they can motor back to the house. And of course, there's a crowd in the way, and a police officer sees David and says, "Hey, no, that's the guy I'm looking for that's wanted for murder." Yeah. A housewife says, "No, it's my husband that's been missing."
The Lavinia family is there too.
The Lavinia's family's chasing after him, saying, "No, you're stealing my Lavinia." You see that, and every time one of them grabs, this Martian, it becomes this other person.
Yeah.
Definitely giving you the impression that they're all seeing what they want to see at the same time.
Yep.
And this is where it's unfortunate that this was made at the time it was made, and the budget was as small as it probably was, and the technology wouldn't have been there for it, I don't imagine.
No.
But in the end, the Martian collapses, and then we see just lap dissolve from one character. Not even lap dissolve, just kind of a almost flash cut dissolve from one person to another.
Yeah.
in my head, even though I'm seeing on the screen, in my head, I'm seeing almost like a morphine, and in the end, an amalgamation of all of them being thrust upon this figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's Wilder who comes up at the very end and sees him as the Martian. Right before the Martian actually dies. And part of me thinking, you know what? He's still under the control of a human mind. It just happens to be Wilder at that moment.
Mm. And that's what's kind of cool about that scene too. It could go however you like it to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually one of the things where the low budget part kind of probably favors it a little bit, because you don't know who's actually controlling what they're seeing in the moment.
Right. I just think the fact that when he finally dies, you could take it as, oh, okay, he's dying, so it's back to his original form. It's like, no, I think it's Wilder who has expressed numerous times how much he wished he could have met a Martian.
Right.
So I think that's why we finally actually see his Martian form before he dies.
The more curious part is, at any point, is that actually what the rest of the people saw? I don't know that that's true.
Exactly. It's very possible that they just saw Lavinia disappear, David disappear.
Yep.
Hank or whatever his name was.
Right, yeah. But yeah, no, and I would, again, with more technology, I would have liked to see something a little more dramatic at the end when finally gone.
Yeah,
but other than that.
Yeah, just blinks out of existence.
Yeah, but yeah, it's that whole mental shift thing. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from that as well, but either way, this was it's actually kind of chilling to watch it all play out.
Yeah. Well, in the third part of the story, what kind of drives it is we've gotten word that war is inevitable on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The government has canceled all funds for space travel. They're pretty much shutting down the colony.
Recalling they're leaving.
Yeah, recalling everyone home. Wilder heads out to try to warn everyone that's not in town, that's on the outskirts, which includes Park Hill, who he and his wife have opened their diner. Of all the themes, the weird, over-the-top, honky-tonk Western diner with Park Hill dressed in the most ridiculous cowboy outfit.
Yeah, no, it's like the flashiest Roy Roger sequin kind of themed outfit.
Yeah. It's awful. But anyway, he goes out to warn him, but he doesn't really believe him. He's like, we're fine. We're going to stay. There's not going to be a war. They've been saying that for the past 50 years. And Wilder's like, well, change your mind. Be in town in the morning. We'll catch you later. So that night, Park Hill and his wife are sitting there, and suddenly a Martian just shows up behind him.
Yep.
White robe, very ornate mask, and tells Park Hill, hands him something, tries to hand him something, said, "This is for you." Park Hill assumes it's a weapon, shoots him, blinks this Martian out of existence.
Yep.
Sometime later, they realize they discovered a whole bunch of Martians with sand ships are heading their way. Assuming they're coming for revenge, they run. And the only thing they can, because their car isn't working, and fortunately, Park Hill had bought a sand ship in an auction.
Of course.
So we get a sand ship race.
Yeah.
Which is, again, the budget truly shows itself here.
It does.
It's a little laughable. It's kind of cute, but...
It does, but all the rest of it was very heavy, very, very thought-provoking, and now we're in a shootout race in boats in the sand.
Yeah, and anything that could be concerning as dramatic is immediately erased by Park Hill's outfit and the model shots of the ships going across the sand.
Right, and this is where whatever you thought of humanity during the first couple of things, there was at least a little hope in there. And this just moved us into humanity is absurd and deserves everything that's about to happen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, Parkle's immediately panicking and just running and firing. I don't know. Is that what a normal person would do? I don't know. In that situation.
The wild jumps to conclude that was the part that was really setting me off. I'm like his grasp of the circumstances happening right now, right around him. He is jumping to the most wild of conclusions, and then watching him try to convince his wife that he's right in all that he has done, all the way through. Like he's trying so hard to convince her that I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, they've even established that what that Martian had wasn't a weapon.
Right.
And so all these Martians are showing up, but he still just figures, oh my God, they're coming to kill me.
Right.
Instead of like trying to stick around and saying, look, it was an accident. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't know. No. They're trying to kill me, and let's take the next step and just murder them all.
Yeah, no, and it's really hard to take in the era in which we live, but it's that whole, I am going to absolve myself of all consequences regardless of how wrong I am, and I will stick with that and make it worse as I do it.
Because of my impression of the situation.
Right, yes, exactly. I have so grotesquely misread this situation. But I'm not only going to continue that methodology, I am going to double, triple, and quadruple down on it. And then I am going to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking until people believe me. Yeah. Sounds familiar these days.
Very much. Well, Parkhill manages to murder the crew of at least 2 sand ships before he's finally overtaken. And the Martians board his ship.
They weren't there to hurt him.
They weren't there to hurt him at all. In fact, they hand him what equates to a deed to over half of Mars. Mm-hmm. And then they leave, telling him to be prepared that the night is the night is tonight.
Yes.
Prepare, I believe, is their quote. And they leave. Well, Sam Parkhill's big dream is for thousands of miners and truckers and workers to be coming, because he set his diner right at the junction of what's supposedly going to be 2 major highways that go to and from the mountains. So he figures this is it. This is when the next wave is going to come. He's going to be rich. He and his wife are sitting there through their little telescope, watching the Earth, waiting to see all the rockets come. And instead, they see the Earth engulfed in nuclear fire.
Yep. Reduced to slag before their very eyes.
Yeah. Again, it's that weird scene where you got Parkle looking ridiculous, and then the most heaviest and darkest stuff going on around him. But that is a hell of a scene. And I tell you what, Darren McGavin in that moment proves that he is actually a hell of an actor. Mm-hmm. Because it's just all in his face. He's all excited. I mean, he's over the top Parkhill. Oh, come on, you hungry truckers. And then he sees what's happened, and just watch his face literally just melt. I mean, his entire dream, his entire life, everything he's known, snuffed out in an instant, and he watched it.
And it's also watching your own death.
Yeah.
Like, he's the first to know. He is the first to definitively know. Everyone that is remaining on Mars is a dead person walking.
Yep.
Because they still need Earth. And there isn't one.
Right. Yeah, there was some line earlier on that Wilder was when war was inevitable, he's talking to his brother who was at that mission control.
Yeah.
And he tells them, like, look, we know enough about the planet. We can probably, a small group of people can probably survive. That's all we get that suggests that anyone left behind might have a chance of hope.
Actually, because this is where we're left.
Yeah.
This is where we're left in the middle of this mini-series. One, it absolutely a gajillion % begs to see the next one.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and how do you like his wife has literally snapped.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
She's lost it. She's now all... Everything that he was doing beforehand to convince her that this was all a great idea is just reality instantly in her head because she cannot conceive of what just happened.
Oh, I loved it. She turns like, oh, let's get those hot dogs burling and those hamburgers grilling. But I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be a slow season.
Yeah, no, that line was insane. Never have you seen a human being snap more perfectly.
Oh, I think right there, any love she might have had for this man that has dragged her to this godforsaken world under the dreams of being rich, and now she's just watched her planet burn, knowing that those people aren't coming. No one's coming. They are going to die alone on this world. That's kind of like any love she might have had for that man evaporated along with the oceans of the earth.
Yeah, and now you're waiting for the shoe to drop on the Martian joke. He was left with a deed to half the planet.
Mm-hmm.
To what end?
Yeah, that's where I'm actually...
It's a piece of paper that means nothing to no one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting going into the third part.
Yes.
After that, because we definitely get the impression that many people have already left to head home. So, what happens? What is there to continue? What's the story from going forward?
Right.
This is probably the story I remember the least out of all of them.
Yeah, it is and since I've never seen the miniseries and I've long since forgotten most of the book, yeah, I'm going into this blind.
So yeah, I'm very curious. I'm very excited to see this third part now. And then I'm going to be kind of sorry this is over, because these so far have been some fantastic discussions. When you've got the quality of like something based on a Bradbury that's actually done really well and really faithfully, what do you expect?
Yeah, and see, I get that if you're not used to this or aren't drawn to the cerebral kind of, you really got to put yourself in this and take out of it anything you can. I'm not finding it boring. I find some of it irritating from just the perspective of how they handle some of the material. But nothing about it is boring to me at all.
No, I wouldn't say it's boring. As I said, I do think there are times where it feels a bit slow. Mm-hmm. I felt like this second part, it was only another hour and a half, but this one felt like it was a lot longer.
I think it had to do with the fact that in this case, the three stories intertwine with each other so much that it feels more like a long-form story. It's not it doesn't feel like a series of short stories like the first one did.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what makes it kind of feel like it
perception thing
draws out a little longer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't have one part without the other part. So, yeah, but the one thing before we wrap this all up that I still wanted to pick on, which I think is funny, especially watching it in this way, it is just that whole opening sequence of watching the miniseries where it's the recap of the first one when it's like, previously on Knight Rider. and all of that feel about it. And I'm like, this is like some heavy stuff. So playing that out that way feels kind of wrong.
Yep. Nope, I agree. It's actually done. The recap and the next on the next Martian Chronicles is interesting because there is no voiceover. There is no previously on. Next time on, it's just flashes of scenes, and you're kind of like, what's happening here?
Yeah, because when you get to after we get past the decimation of Earth and her flipping out, we just go into a sequence of images that are all for the next story, but with no concept that that's what we just did. If it weren't for the fact that it just picks up pace super fast, you would have thought, oh, hey, it just kept going.
Yeah, we actually went ahead and just as soon as that started playing, we stopped it. No spoilers. So
yeah, exactly.
Obviously, we said last time we couldn't find any reviews of the time or anything. I looked myself in between recordings. I didn't find anything. We did get one comment on Facebook from Billy Flynn, who says, "What a wonderful uneven miniseries."
That's a fair evaluation.
Yeah. So yes, next time we will finish our discussion on the Martian Chronicles with Part 3, The Martians. But for now, thank you very much for listening to the Time Shifters podcast. If you have any feedback or thoughts on anything we discussed on this episode, please send us an email or comment on any of our social media posts. Follow the link in the show notes or visit timeshifterspodcast.com.
If you can spare some time and wherever you are listening to the show allows you to leave rating or a review, please do so. That does help more people find the show.
If you can spare some change, visit Ko-fi.com/TSPOE podcasts and donate it. This will help with the costs of web hosting and episode production. Our episodes will always be free, but any help you can offer, really, really appreciated.
And if you like stuff, then please consider shopping at TeePublic by using our affiliate link. Again, just follow the link in the show notes or on the website. It won't cost you any extra, and anything and everything you purchase will help us as well as support many independent artists.
And I will say we have a lot of really fun stuff in our store, but also many products from other artists are highlighted in our store. And you can search around. As long as you follow that link initially, you can search around and find some really great stuff. But we have things Star Trek related, Star Wars related, just geeky stuff related, television related, all kinds of stuff. Dark Shadows fans, if there's any out there listening, one of our most popular designs is available in our store, and I think you might like it if you haven't already got it.
Wow, shameless plugging. I love it.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. We will talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya.